Okay, next up is lightning talks, which is really, really nice. Short 5-minute talks that touch upon one subject really quickly. Now, the timing here is essential. It just takes, they have 5 minutes and not a second more. I'm going to be pretty brutal about this. After 5 minutes, it's just done. Not even finishing a sentence, it's over. So I want you to help me with that. So I put on this alarm clock, and I want, right when you hear the alarm, you start clapping, applauding, right? So that it's over. It's fantastic. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, you can cheer if you want to, but let us try this for a minute. Okay, when you hear this. Good, good, that works. Let's try another time just to be sure. Right, okay. Okay, we got that. So now you know, after 5 minutes, the applause will start. I will show you, you will see the counter, and you will hear the alarm when he's not done yet. Okay, so we have 5 speakers here. It changed a little bit, as you can see, but it doesn't matter. It's 5 fantastic short talks. Really looking forward to learning a lot about 5 different subjects. Okay, so give a warm applause for our first speaker.
Thank you. So, my speech is about the Web Speech API. Who heard about that? Okay, fine. I think it's a pretty nice way to interact with the website, new way. We don't learn about that much. And I played around a little bit. Here's some links to documentation. If you're interested in it, you can Google for that. And yeah, I think it's maybe the fastest live coding session ever. The first thing is that the computer should talk to me. So there is an API, the speech synthesis utterance, and oh, can you understand that? The sound is a little problem. Okay, so we can give a string to that, and the computer is talking to me. Fine, cool. So the next thing is the voice is a little bit like computer. There are a lot of other voices available. So other languages, they all have names. This one's called Agnes, Albert, Alex, Alva, Bells. So I searched a little bit for some voices, and I want to show you some. This is hysterical. Some stupid laughing. This one, oh, I hope you understand that, is whispering. I can see dead people. Okay, and the last one, it was interesting, was named Bad News. Yeah, fine. So, we could let the computer talk, so now it should listen. There's also an API for that. It's called the Web Speech Recognition. And yeah, as you can see, you can define some stuff. It's all in the documentation. And yeah, I will start it. I can talk to the computer. It will be translated by Google, and I get a string back of that. Hello world. Yeah, there it is. The string comes, and I can do everything with a string. So, okay, I have 2 minutes nearly left. So I created a little stuff. My subject was personality with a computer. And yeah, in the morning, I hope it worked. I created a little script that should interact with me. So let's see.
Hi, Marcus. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. How are you?
I don't feel comfortable.
Why don't you feel comfortable?
There are sitting people staring at us.
Oh, okay. So should I make a joke that they laugh and not staring at us? Should I make a joke that they laugh and not staring at us? Should I make a joke? He don't want to hear a joke. So let's start again. We have the time, right?
Hi, Marcus.
Yeah.
Nice to see you.
I think we should end with the talk, right? No, we don't. I don't know if it's a network issue. Okay, 1 minute left.
Hi, Marcus. Nice to see you.
Do we end the talk? No. Okay, fine. But I have a video for that. So I played around at home, and I have some old power connectors, wireless power connectors, and I soldered a little bit and connected it to the Raspberry Pi, and then I created this stuff.
Hey, ich bin zu Hause. Bitte schalte im Wohnzimmer das Licht an.
Ich habe das Licht angeschaltet.
My living room, not care about that.
Was für dich tun?
Ich möchte etwas lesen. Bitte schalte im Wohnzimmer die Leselampe an.
Ich habe dir dein Licht zum Lesen eingeschaltet. Ja, bitte.
Jetzt möchte ich schlafen gehen. Bitte schalte alle Lichter aus im Wohnzimmer.
Ich habe alle Lichter ausgeschaltet. Ich wünsche dir eine gute Nacht.
So that I can go to sleep well. Yeah. Okay, fine.
Wow, thank you so much. That was fantastic. Great live. Great live demo, and as all live demos do, they go wrong. Fantastic, as it should. So I think we need new hardware now. Can we have the next speaker up? Who's next? Okay, come on, come on.
You have it in Chrome, right? This one? This one.
Yeah.
You need audio?
No.
Perfect.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah, visualization is a bit weird. Can I just exit first?
Yeah. I guess. Does it work?
Yeah. Yeah, it will work. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, give a warm applause to our next speaker.
Hello, very nice to be here. Thanks for joining. So I will have like 10 seconds per slide, so I will rush it a bit. Very quickly about me, my name is Pierluigi Pesenti. I'm working for the web as a web developer since '99, and I'm currently employed at Appway, one of our platinum sponsors here in Zurich. Appway is hiring mostly front-end engineers, so please down, we have a stand, you can apply there. And I'm not much a social beast, but yeah, you can just add me on LinkedIn if you want to talk. So yeah, the talk will be definitely about SVG graphics, but first a bit of introduction. Okay, this is not about imagery in general, but for UI assets. And so raster graphics for UI simply doesn't make any sense anymore. It has finite resolution. You have to make multiple HTTP calls unless you sprite sheet, but it's quite a pain to maintain. We all know this. So we have, yeah, some sort of better solution. We have icon fonts or dingbat fonts. You can package a bunch of assets in one single HTTP call, so it's cool. It's vector, super cool. You basically don't edit it. There are tools out there to make this, but actually it's quite a nightmare. And there are monochromatics. And actually you are binding a Q to a house, a K to an umbrella. And then if you want to give some sense, you have to fill your CSS with this kind of information. Yeah, I found myself in the past doing this kind of tricks, which I'm quite shameful about. So you use the dingbat fonts, you place a background, and then you play with, you know, border radius, this kind of stuff. I think this is quite outdated. And so, yeah, just move on. So SVG, we all know it's vector. You can have as many colors as you want. You can animate, style with CSS, and you can access single layers and single parts of your symbols. So that's very powerful. You can interact with JavaScript. And yeah, the thing is that as for images, you still have multiple files until now. So, and you have mixed browser support even across modern browsers. For background, it's quite a mess. And while doing sprite sheets is technically possible, it's really a mess. So why almost nobody uses it? Yeah, because it's a bit more complex to maintain. but not even that much. You have to know a thing or two, and then you can just work about it. So I wrote a library to help the SVG workflow streamlining. The library has been sitting there for a while, and then my colleague at Apple, they pushed me to release it, and so it's very new. This is the first time it's being presented. So it revises the old workflow with working with SVG. So instead of having multiple HTTP calls, you can have just one library. You can uniform browser support. We will go to that later. And then, yeah, you just use a library instead of a spreadsheet, and then you have fun. So how to use it? You just include your JavaScript library, the SVG master one. It's also an NPM module, so you can require it or as you prefer. And then you just reference to your SVG library. This SVG actually contains a bunch of symbols, and we will see it later. So you have one single HTTP call, and you define a very basic CSS rule, of course, that then can be extended and modified. And then you use it as an image. So you can use an I tag with a class, in this case icon, icon dash, and the name of the ID of the symbol, and that's customizable. So whatever can be accessed via CSS selector, it can be passed. You can also use it as a background, and SVG as a background is really awesome. And to maximize compatibility, the background is base64 encoded and inlined in the SVG, because inline SVG is the real key, so you can access via CSS and do a lot of very cool things. And by default, to save some memory, it's using instancing, so you just have a use tag that refers to the only one symbol you have in your library. Eventually, you can clone. You add a new attribute, and it will copy the old content, so you don't have to deal with the shadow DOM of the SVG. It's really something you don't want to deal with. And this is how a library is made. So a bunch of symbols, everyone with its own viewport and ID. With the library on GitHub, you will also find a grunt script that package a dependency to SVG Store, which is an open source library that practically you just drop a bunch of SVG files in a folder, you run the grunt script, and you have this as an output. And that's very cool. So these are the references very, very quickly. Yeah, this is the demo page. As you can see, we have a background, very detailed high resolution background. All of this is SVG. You also have packed in some debugging feature, like you can showcase your library. Okay, so you can just reference and check that everything is fine. And then you can, of course, use your repeat properties of your backgrounds as you're used to. And it's really cool. You use SVG without even noticing.
Thank you so much. That looks great. Looks like that will solve a lot of painful problems that you all have, of course. Is it this one, the next one? Okay.
Is this thing working?
Full screen. Windows now.
But this doesn't work. Huh?
Ah, okay. So this should be here. Does it work now? Go away. Yeah? Okay. Good. So up to our next speaker about how working on riots has changed me forever. Riot.js, I know. Okay, so warm applause.
Thank you. So, hi everyone. I work at Ripple. I'm a front-end developer and I program mainly with JavaScript. So, in this talk, I'm going to talk about how Riot has changed my way of working on front-end projects. This was my code yesterday. This code is actually not that old, and that's my code today. I hope anyone sees an improvement here, otherwise I go home. And what's the problem, or at least what was my problem? The problem is that we have too much information. The information comes from design feedback, client fancy requests, working on 5 projects with 10,000 different frameworks and 10,000 different technologies. And so this was a problem for me. I can't wrap my hand around those technologies. And I took some examples from one of the most popular frameworks out there. So don't be scared. I don't want to shit on the work of anyone. So this is actually a template where you see it's not even normal HTML. It's not regular HTML, and it seems like someone has worked on the keyboard and mixed all the characters available, even uppercase, lowercase, it doesn't matter. This is another important framework where you think, okay, somehow this is kind of virtual DOM, but I guess I should build my components in this way. So, and this, anyone loves React. But this is quite funny because in this example, it's the input bigger than the output. So once you work on these kind of technologies and you need to present those stuff to your backend developers or stuff that have no idea what you are doing, basically that's the reaction before the project. So they see the technology you want to use, you say, I swear this is gonna work. And this is how it's gonna end. So even if they need to change a class or a selector, they have no clue about how doing that, unless you are a good front-end developer. So what's the solution? The solution that worked for me was knowing, working on what you know best and learning the foundation of what you're doing. So basically this means learning CSS, HTML, JavaScript, but really well. And by doing this research, I came across Riot.js, and I started using it for a couple of projects. It looked really simple, and then I decided to contribute to this project since probably 1 year ago, and I became the maintainer of this project. So I don't want to talk about Riot, but I want to talk about the philosophy behind this framework. Basically, the philosophy is simplicity is everything. So yes, cool, okay, we understood, but how? This is what worked for me and what changed what improved my workflow. So less code, shorter variable names, less API methods, no semicolon. I know someone here is gonna cry, but elegant and beauty source code. I took really care about the elegance and the beauty of my source code. And this brought in my head also new ideas. So thinking in components, automating everything, building stuff by myself, but of course without reinventing the wheel. And experimenting also with other programming language, stuff you can't do with JavaScript. For example, I recommend to try Golang. And what really improved my workflow was sharing my knowledge by doing a lot of open source. So you need to check my GitHub page. I have a couple of projects, quite interesting. And yeah, I think do we have time? We have still 1 minute. I want to show you quickly what I mean for nice code. Okay, nice. It seems it doesn't work. Okay. So I'm a bit lost. So what should I click exactly? Oh, here we go. So, so this is basically a small example I've created with Riot. As you see, the code, it's really clean, and you can plus minus guess what's happening. So I strongly recommend to test, and I want to close my talk saying, think more with your mind and code with your heart. This is going to bring a lot further. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And within time, that's incredible. Really good. Huh. All right. Our next speaker is going to talk about React Native.
That's right. Hello, everybody. My name is Livio, and I'm working with React Native now for almost 10 months, and I'm really enjoying it, and here's why. So let's just start with what is React Native. So React Native takes the concepts of React for the web and allows us to build native apps with that. So native apps for iOS and Android. And that's important because before, building native apps is really complicated. For example, doing layout on native, for example, for iOS or even for Android, it's completely different. It's something, it has different approaches, and it takes a lot of time to get started. And React Native allows us to really use the things we already know from web, mainly React, and use it for building native apps with the experience and the developer experience of web technologies. So what makes React Native really special? The most important part is that it's truly native. Unlike hybrid apps, which still are important in my opinion, which render HTML and CSS, React Native apps are truly native. So we have the full performance of native apps. And that's sometimes important, but not always, of course. I think there are certain cases where the user really wants that extra bit of performance, and it makes a lot of sense to have that. Now the question, who actually is React Native for? I think it really works best for teams which have a wide background. So for example, in my team, before I started working with React Native, I was most proficient with C++. So I have a really different background from most of my colleagues, which are web developers. However, it's still really, it works really well because we complement each other particularly well. My colleagues can contribute to the code because it's React with something they already know, and I can help them with the native part, and together we build a really great team and can work fast and iterate fast. And I just want to focus on three most important parts why, for you guys, React Native is really interesting. The first one is it's mainly JavaScript. You already know JavaScript. You're already proficient in that. And it's React. React allows us to build and think in components, which is awesome because it makes it so much easier to reason about our code. And then here, for you guys, probably the most important one is layouting and styling. Layouting and styling in React Native is basically what is Flexbox for the web. So you can approach it like it's a Flexbox, as if you would use Flexbox and CSS. One colleague of mine always says, like, he just tries what works for the web, and then most of the time it actually works for React Native as well. And for me, it's really the much better developer experience. I can simply refresh. I don't need to recompile, but I still have the speed and the performance of a native app. So that's really awesome. Now, for some of you guys, it may be scary to write a native app. So that may be the biggest obstacle. But I just want to tell you that you don't need to be afraid to open Xcode or to work on a native project, because it's not that, it's not rocket science. You can do that. I just want to close with a really short app I built for this conference. As you can see, we import, we use a lot of ES6 syntax because it just works out of the box. You don't need to set up Webpack or anything. It just works, which is awesome. So you can also use probably JavaScript libraries you already know from your web React apps. You can, as I said, structure it in components, think in components, which really makes the code so much more readable and easier to understand. And then, as you can see at the bottom part, how you style the React Native app is really similar to how you would do this in web. So you have a very similar experience overall. So if you want to get started with this, if you're interested in that, then I can highly recommend you this book by Bonnie Eisenman. It's an awesome book. It really is also for people which have more visual background, so you can see how things look like. And yeah, if you want to chat after the talk, that would be nice, or I'll be on Twitter as well. Thanks.
Wow. That was pretty fast. Looks like native is faster after all.
You know why?
The green one. Okay, and now we're going to be talking about Sophie.
Hi. So I work at NZZ. This is like a newspaper in Switzerland, for those of you who don't know it. We have this team, it's called Storytelling. We build stuff for single stories on the web. So we don't do the whole website front end, but just for single stories. We've got some problems with these. Some of those everyone has who builds stuff for the web. consistency is hard, especially if you want to have like same design-ish and have a clear look and feel of your stuff, but you build a lot of different things. NZZ.ch, like the front end of the website, has its own release cycle that is pretty slow. We sometimes need to move faster if there is a story emerging. We need to build something within a day, release it tomorrow. We can't wait for changes on the front end code of NZZ.ch. So still, this separate team builds stuff there, and they sometimes change. Let's say the font family or some shades of gray or whatever, and we want our visualizations and things to still work and adapt to these changes, but we don't want to touch dozens or hundreds of code bases to update these. We have some HTML that is deployed somewhere, there is some CSS in there probably. We don't want to update all of these by hand, so this is not a thing we want to do. But still, we want to use the new font family. We want to use new shades of gray or other ones, or adapt to a different background color, whatever. So the solution, or what I think could be a way to the solution. We have a style guide that defines some fonts and colors and components and stuff. You pretty much know that. This is pretty much just visual stuff. I looked at what others did right. There are some really smart folks over at Financial Times. They built this origami thing. They have it for quite some time, I guess. The idea is that you do dynamic compilation of versioned bundles of modules. So let's say we have, yeah, we come to that later when you see the architecture. All the JavaScript that is in there or is going to be in there should not be like depending on some framework. Probably in 2 years something else is the next hip thing to do. We don't want to depend on that. So just do vanilla JS in there for some behavior of an input field or whatever. This is how the architecture looks like at the moment. We start from the bottom. There is the user agent, this reddish box on down left. This does a simple GET request. For example, here we have this bundle. Then we have 2 modules in there, which is the first one is Sophie font. We have a version, Sophie input, another version, some sub-module thingy there in the brackets. This goes to key CDN, so we have everything cached in there. Then there is this Sophie service, which is like a small nodes service. This parses this URL, finds out, yeah, what modules we need, in what versions we need them. It goes to GitHub API to fetch the code from these versions that is like with Semver, we check if it's valid. If there are some internal dependency, like font is depending on color because it needs to know what shade of gray this title needs to have. This gets all compiled with SAS at the moment. We then store this bundle in some S3 storage to have it cached because this compilation and fetching the GitHub API stuff and everything takes some time. So we store this there. Actually, when a request comes in, we check if we have for this exact ID, which is built from this URL. This is the ID. And if we have that already, if we do, we serve this. Otherwise, we bundle it. And there is some async job to rebuild all these bundles every hour. Because let's say if color is updated, but font not, we need to rebuild the bundles because the shade of gray is probably different or something. That's it. I really like some feedback, so approach me if you have ideas or think this is all stupid or whatever. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And please give an applause again for all these speakers. Actually, I think all of them managed to stay on time, so that's good. I think we go on immediately to our next speaker, right?